Now, India has shown its military might by answering China in a language that it understands. Jawans have stood their ground, refusing to concede an inch of India's territory. The hardline stance has forced Beijing to come to the negotiating table by requesting the military for talks at the LAC. But to keep China in check, the centre has adopted a multifold approach. While on one hand, India has asked China to vacate all friction areas, there are diplomatic dialogues going on simultaneously behind the scenes as well as otherwise. Foreign Minister S Jaishnkar is going to meet his counterpart in China Wang Yi through video conferencing today at the sidelines of the RIC trilateral. Then you have Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, who's meeting Russian top brass to boost India's defence capabilities by pushing for a speedy delivery of S-400 Triumph missile systems. Let's go across quickly to my colleague Srinjoy Chaudhary joining us right now. He's been getting us the latest reports as well. Srinjoy, today is the all-important RIC, although on the face of it, no bilateral issues are going to be discussed. But we expect hectic behind-the-scenes activity, given the fact this is the first virtual meeting between S Jaishnkar and Wang Yi. Yes, Lavrov is going to be present, but we understand that this is the first such virtual communication after the 17th June phone call between Yi and Jaishankar. What else are we picking up? What message is China going to get today?
Absolutely right. The important point is that we've been hearing again and again that this is not for bilateral discussions. This is really a trilateral meeting. As you rightly said, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, is going to be there, as of course Wang Yi and S Jaishnkar. The important thing is that while this is a trilateral, we will actually have to wait and see whether something on Ladakh comes up or not. It is quite possible that someone like Sergei Lavrov brings it up and says that, look, I'm hearing, I don't know, we don't know exactly what is going to happen. Technically, of course, yes, we know that it's going to be not about bilateral issues, not about India, China, not about Ladakh. It could be about COVID and lots of other important issues. But there is no stopping it. If the issue does come up, then of course it will have to be discussed.
Right.
We will have to wait and see what really happens in the meeting. But it is an important meeting.
As we speak right now, we're getting the first visuals from Russia. I believe Sergei Lavrov is speaking. We'll see whether or not he's speaking in English. It's unlikely, however. He always speaks in Russian, mostly does. We'll, of course, also keep that in the window. These are first visuals that you're seeing on Times Now. And we understand that the trilateral is supposed to begin around 1:30 India time. That is now. We also expect Lavrov to hold a press conference post the trilateral meeting with S Jaishnkar, Wang Yi and himself. Before I go to Pradeep Datta, who's also on the program, I want to welcome Maruf Raza, consulting editor as well. Maruf, now there's been a lot of talk about how the Galwan incident must force a rethink as far as China policy is concerned. We also keep hearing about the fact that India must assert itself in groupings like the Quad, really not look behind our shoulder while engaging more with the US. Do you think this reassertion has become a necessity now?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because in the last at least decade or more, India has been stepping very cautiously into bilateral, trilateral and quadrilateral arrangements, primarily looking at not offending anybody, and in the case of the Indian Ocean arrangements, not offending the Chinese. But I think the time has come. This is a watershed moment. We now know very clearly that China is not going to back off from its ambitious land grab. So we have to take other steps which will work in our favor, not directly impacting on the land grab, but having a geostrategic implication. For example, we should now, whether Mr. Lavrov brings it up or not, I think it is quite certain that Mr. Jaishankar will bring up this issue about, the Chinese doing border incursions, act like ostriches anymore. We did that in the 60s. And it led to a 62 conflict. We've done that in the last 22 bilateral meetings with the Chinese, always promising the people of India that everything is honky-dory and things are moving well. If they were, we wouldn't have come to such a pass right now as we are seeing. Equally important is the fact that India must remind the Russians that whatever they're developing links with Pakistan and China, and Russia is engaging with Pakistan and China ever since India has begun to veer towards the US with a number of strategic cooperation arrangements. But if Russia wishes to take that call, then India has some trumps up its sleeve and will call up some of the engagement and some of the commitments that India has made to the Russians, either for the S-400 air defense system, or as we've read in the news, that, Sukhois and MiG aircrafts are being asked for from Russia.
Right.
The Americans are falling over their hilltops and falling over themselves to try and offer us anything we need. So we have an alternative. Remember, in all these situations, as an importer, you have a greater advantage than an exporter.
Well,
so the reason Russia
fact,
has veered towards those countries...
and apologize for intervening there, considering the fact that when Turkey wanted S-400 Triumph missiles, there was no delay in delivery. They've already got theirs. So has China, by the way. The only delay here is for India, and I hope Rajnath Singh, the defense minister, must smoothen that over while he's there for his 3-day visit. Please stay with us, Maruf and Srinjoy. I want to quickly go across to Pradeep Datta also. Given the fact, Pradeep, that General Narwane, the chief of the army staff today, is going to be in Leh, not only boosting the morale of the troops and forward posts as well. We are also being told he'll go to the forward-most post as far as India-China boundary is concerned. This is yet another facet of what India is using as a response, not just diplomatic heft or muscle, but also making sure that we shore up our defense capabilities, and the message goes across militarily that India is ready for anything, any eventuality.
Yes, Arthur, you are absolutely right. India is not dealing with this issue at the diplomatic level, but also trying to deal with that military level. Today's visit of Manoj Narwane, he is not only going to see that to what level we had been able to bolster our defenses, but also he is going to interact with the local, because locals are the eyes and ears of the people near line of action.
Ministers to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the conclusion of the Second World War, as well as the foundation of the United Nations. The victory over Nazism and fascism was achieved through sacrifices across many theatres by many countries. India made a significant contribution with 2.3 million of its citizens under arms and 14 million more participating in war production. Indian blood was shed at the battlefields of the world, from Tobruk, El Alamein and Monte Cassino to Singapore, Kohima and Borneo. We helped keep key supply chains open to both your countries, one through the Persian corridor and the other across the Himalayan hump. If Indian personnel were conferred the Order of the Red Star, the medical mission led by Dr. Kotnis was a legend in China. So tomorrow, when our military contingent marches through the Red Square, it would be an affirmation of the difference that we made. When victors met to fashion the ensuing global order, the political circumstances of that era did not give India due recognition. This historical injustice has stood uncorrected over the last 75 years, even as the world has changed. Therefore, on this momentous occasion, it is important for the world to realize both the contribution that India made and the need to rectify the past. But beyond history, international affairs must also come to terms with contemporary reality. The United Nations began with 50 members. Today it has 193. Surely its decision making cannot continue to be in denial of this fact. We, the RIC countries, have been active participants in shaping the global agenda. It is India's hope that we will also now converge on the value of reformed multilateralism. Excellencies, this special meeting reiterates our belief in the time-tested principles of international relations. But the challenge today is not just one of concepts and norms, but equally of their practice. The leading voices of the world must be exemplars in every way, respecting international law, recognizing the legitimate interests of partners, supporting multilateralism, and promoting common good are the only way to build a durable world order. I thank Russia for convening this meeting, and I look forward to our further discussions.
There you go. That's Subramaniam Jaishankar in his opening remarks at the trilateral meeting of foreign ministers of Russia, India and China, paying glowing tribute to the sacrifices made by Indians at the end of World War II, which also is a central motif in this year's victory parade in Moscow. We have Rajnath Singh's present there, and we have External Affairs Minister Jaishankar participating in that. Now, he's also followed protocol, that's to enjoy. Clearly nothing about Ladakh or Galwan in the opening remarks, and that's the way it should be. Again, I must remind our viewers, on the face of it, there is no bilateral issue between any member country on the agenda. We expect that to happen behind closed door, behind the scenes, and that's what we are getting to know.
Yes, undoubtedly. This was something that was very clear right from the beginning, that this would be an issue. When you were going to discuss this issue, it would be on multilateral issues. And Jaishankar was exactly on the ball. He spoke about India's contribution during World War II and the defeat of Nazism. He mentioned specific battles, in fact, Tobruk and El Alamein, and on the eastern side, Singapore, and so on. The important point, of course, is the other point he made about the fact that there is a historical injustice. India is one of the most populous nations of the world. India is a nuclear power,
right,
and yet also a very strong economic power, yet is not a permanent member of the UN Security Council.
Oh.
That point was touched upon as well. And India has a major role in
absolutely.
Contemporary affairs.
Please stay on with us. We want to play out for our viewers what S Jaishnkar has said before I go to Maruf. Let's play it out one more time.
We welcome this special RIC meeting of foreign ministers to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the conclusion of the Second World War, as well as the foundation of the United Nations. The victory over Nazism and fascism was achieved through sacrifices across many theaters by many countries. India made a significant contribution with 2.3 million of its citizens under arms and 14 million more participating in war production. Indian blood was shed at the battlefields of the world, from Tobruk, El Alamein and Monte Cassino to Singapore, Kohima and Borneo. We helped keep key supply chains open to both your countries, one through the Persian corridor and the other across the Himalayan hump. If Indian personnel were conferred the Order of the Red Star, the medical mission led by Dr. Kotnis was a legend in China. So tomorrow, when our military contingent marches through the Red Square, it would be an affirmation of the difference that we made. When victors met to fashion the ensuing global order, the political circumstances of that era did not give India due recognition. This historical injustice has stood uncorrected over the last 75 years, even as the world has changed. Therefore, on this momentous occasion, it is important for the world to realize both the contribution that India made and the need to rectify the past. But beyond history, international affairs must also come to terms with contemporary reality. The United Nations began with 50 members. Today it has 193. Surely its decision making cannot continue to be in denial of this fact. We, the RIC countries, have been active participants in shaping the global agenda. It is India's hope that we will also now converge on the value of reformed multilateralism. Excellencies, this special meeting reiterates our belief in the time-tested principles of international relations. But the challenge today is not just one of concepts and norms, but equally of their practice. The leading voices of the world must be exemplars in every way, respecting international law, recognizing the legitimate interests of partners, supporting multilateralism, and promoting common good are the only way to build a durable world order. I thank Russia for convening this meeting, and I look forward to our further discussions.
Maruf, the last bit was very interesting. Renewed look at reformed multilateralism. Big players must understand and respect international law. Certain hidden messages there as well, but clearly a push towards a greater participation of a country like India in the UN and on the diplomatic stage.
Yes, Atar, you're pretty spot on. Because that was what I was going to talk about. I think Mr. Jaishankar is, having been a career diplomat, knows diplomacy better than most of us. And he's rightly highlighted 3 or 4 issues that India has continued to labor upon ever since we took up the issue to ask for an expansion of the UN Security Council and India to find a seat there. The blockages have come from not just China, which continues to drag its feet on everything, from whether India should get NSG membership to even declaring Masood Azhar a UN proscribed terrorist. But equally important is the fact that, this is the time, this is the turning point, not just for India's national security after what China has done after 16 June, but this is also the turning point for the world to take a fresh call on where we should all be headed post-COVID. And I think a first step in that direction is President Trump's suggestion that you must expand the G7 to G7+4 or G7+6, whatever it becomes eventually, and India should be party to that. Because for a variety of reasons, and I've always argued for the last 20-25 years that India meets every benchmark of the United Nations, except for the fact that Pakistan keeps hankering about a UN resolution that remains unresolved. But Pakistan themselves are a signatory that the UN resolution is a passé as far as India-Pakistan is concerned after the 1972 Shimla Accord. More importantly, India is a huge contributor to UN peacekeeping operations. India does not falter in its commitment to following the line on any international law. And India has shown very clearly that it's not a country that defies international order and has aggressive intentions, as China continues to do, or even some others have done in the past. And because they got themselves elected on a seat for 10% of what made the UN when the UN came into being, in 1945, of 5 countries out of 51 countries that existed in the world order then, it's about time we look at another 10% of the 194 plus countries that make up the UN today. And I don't see any reason why.
That's been the consistent message as far as Subramaniam Jaishankar is concerned. Also, since I have you, I wanted to prick your brains and slightly pull you back towards the current situation with China. But I'm being told I have to take a very short break right now. If we do have time after the break, I'll come back to you on that. Take a break, come right back. Coverage continues of the RIC meet here in Times Now. We're back. Maruf Raza continues to be with us. Maruf, I want to swing back to what India's options are post the Galwan reality. Initially, we knew that the trilateral perhaps was not going to be attended by Jaishankar, but then there was a rethink in the External Affairs Ministry. He's now attending it. How do you see Russia's participation, not just participation, but its positioning directly between China and India? On one hand, it has been a pretty solid partner over the years as far as India is concerned, starting with the early 70s, but it's not as if it's a complete stranger to China either. Does that mean to you that it's either perfectly placed to make sure that things de-escalate, or do you think it puts them in a difficult position between China and India? How do you see it?
Athar, that is the key question, and to which the Indian establishment has to find answers. I think, the terms of reference to New Delhi should be, you have to set aside what were your terms of engagement with China in the past. You can't continue to carry the baggage of the past and go back with a whole lot of arrangements that we've had with the Chinese from 1993 to 2013 and say, listen, we agreed to this, so why don't we, like gentlemen, go back and respect what we had agreed to. It's very clear that the Chinese are in no mood to withdraw. And after the talks, most latest talks also, the sticking points are that in a retreat. My guess is they will not retreat trade unless you get at least 3 pressure points on them. The first pressure point is announce sweeping economic arrangements by which the pinch is felt by China. I am not in any way suggesting that stop taking Chinese goods, because we can't do that. You know, our telecom, our computers, our pharmaceutical, and some other industries are linked with Chinese small parts and software. So we can't get away from that very easily unless we enhance our capability. And the government should now set a 2 or 3 year timeline that tell the local MSMEs and other industries, get your act together and fill up that gap. The second thing is we need to exercise more maritime pressure on China, because it is not pushing them off from that position on the ground physically that you're going to achieve much. You will get them to pull back if you put something else in front of them to say that, listen, unless you pull off from what was agreed, I'm sorry, you're not going to have
Maru,
access
since
to the
I have very
streets of
little time,
Malacca,
I want to squeeze one more question in before we take another break. As long as we're talking about pressure points here, do you think the time is now right to perhaps open up more engagement with Taiwan? We already have representative offices there. They have offices here. But do you think it's time to expand that partnership just to sort of, I wouldn't use the word needle China, but let them know that we can also have a couple of diplomatic trump cards on our way? And what are your views on supporting more democracy in Hong Kong in light of the national security law that China has passed there?
Absolutely. I agree with you entirely. Again, I've been a very strong advocate that we must enhance relations with China. You know, for long, we've carried the intellectual baggage of Nehru's times that Tibet will be our trump card with China. But Tibet is not a trump card, because China had taken over Tibet, and Nehru recognized that in the Panchsheel Agreement, which said Tibet is a part of China. But we don't even have a full diplomatic arrangement with Taiwan, and even Taiwan and China have a lot of strain and military tensions, but it is one of China's biggest trading partners.
Right. So you do agree with that assessment. Unfortunately, we're running out of time on this, Maruf, but I must thank Srinjoy Chaudhary for inputs, as well as Pradeep Datta, and thank you, Maruf. We'll, of course, keep coming back to this story as it develops today. We'll take a